going, guys? Jake De Agrela from the Cinema Sideshow podcast here. We're clipping this into episode 106 of the show, and I'm joined by two very special guests who were involved in the local film The Crossing. I'm joined by Stephen Mihaljevich, and I'm joined by Desmond Richardson. How are you two going?
Very well, thank you.
Very well, thank you.
Awesome. How did I go with the surname there?
It was pretty good. You missed the J.
No,
I missed the J?
I believe it's pronounced Stephen Mihaljevich.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, so co-writer and director
Yep.
Stephen for The Crossing, and the composer is Desmond. And first off, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's actually the first time we've had, I would say, guests of this caliber on the show. We've had some people on who've done some short films, but you two are involved in a big local feature film.
Thank you.
Well, that's just rude. I mean, clearly you prefer just to run a silent race on your own, with no one else in the room, to wait 106 episodes to finally get someone in. Obviously, the idea is running dry, particularly when you hire us to.
Isn't it great to have composers on the show? I mean, geez, it's a whole other level.
Sorry, Jake.
Complexity to it. I mean, that is a good point. We should address the elephant in the room. Zeke isn't here. He wasn't available, unfortunately. But I'm definitely going to make him go watch this film very soon.
Cool.
So he can join in on the conversation soon
Awesome.
enough. I got a logline here for the film, for The Crossing, if you want me to read it out. For those
Sure.
at home who don't know what the film is
Sure.
about. When a suspicious death remains unsolved, three boys suspect a reclusive indigenous man named Bobby, played by Kelton Pell, and relentlessly harass him until one of the trio breaks the toxic cycle to make amends. So, that's the film.
Thank you.
Mm.
That's
Okay.
it. That's
That
the
pretty
film.
much sums it up.
In case you two didn't know what it was about.
I've forgotten.
I've heard about it. I remember that Kelton was in it. He was awesome. He was so good, man.
Yeah,
He was so
he
good.
brings a lot to this this film.
Dude.
Yeah. It's definitely the heart of the
Absolutely.
story.
Yeah,
I feel like.
absolutely.
Now, before we get into a bit more of a specific conversation about the music of the film, I want to throw some facts at you because the film's been out for a little while now. Halo Films is distributing it. It's been playing around the block. Official selection at the Revelation Film Festival. That's how I saw it last month. Winner at the London Independence Film Awards. Winner of the Micro Budget Feature Award at Toronto. Official selection at the Paris Film Festival, and I believe that is where you got the Best Editing nomination in Paris.
Yes.
Congratulations,
Oh,
Stephen.
thank you. My head is getting large.
Best Feature Film nominee at Hollywood Boulevard Film Festival, and it's screening all over the place. Most notably at Backlot Perth, but more recently at the Kookaburra Outdoor Cinema, where I believe it was sold out.
Last night it was fantastic, great atmosphere, and it was great to sort of bring the film home where it all sort of began, and all the locals were really excited to see the areas. And
Was that in Mundaring, was it?
yeah,
Yeah.
Mundaring. So
Wicked.
half the people there, I think, were actually from Swanview, and they were sort of cheering at the beginning when I said, you're going to see Salisbury Road, you're going to see Talbot, you're going to see this, and it is what it actually is in real life. So John Forrest is John Forrest. We don't sort of it's not fiction. We actually use the same street names as what it is in real life. So people are pretty excited.
Can we talk about that? Like, what an awesome backdrop like Swanview was for the movie.
No, we're going to talk about the music.
But it was. It just looked wicked, like, because we're not used to seeing it. So yeah, I mean, I watched the movie twice on the big screen, and it was a comment that I got from a lot of friends and that came down was just how great Perth looked on camera, because we weren't used to seeing it. Or at least
Yeah,
I certainly wasn't used to seeing it. I mean, I'm sure there's been a few films made over here, but
Yeah, well, I think I had the advantage of sort of living in the area for about 8 years and just walking around and asking myself, why hasn't a feature film been made here? This is extraordinary. There's so much beauty, but it's also got sort of stark contrast of pockets of darkness as well. So there's these incredible juxtapositions, and the landscape is amazing. There's so much diversity. So yeah, and of course, obviously for me, it's just a great sort of exciting thing to make a film at home, basically on the doorstep of your house. In fact, the house that Bobby
literally your home.
is actually my house.
It's literally your home.
Actually my house. So
Yeah. We hung out there, did lots of editing there.
A
and
very
then
personal film.
Bobby would come in, have a shower, you get ready for work, shoot off. Oh, hey, Bobby. Yeah, just
Yeah.
cool. Sorry, mate. Yeah. No, you guys carry on.
Yep.
Great.
For sure. No, I definitely got that sense, and literally the first shot of the film was a road that I'd driven earlier that day.
Oh, cool.
So,
Which road was that?
it's got like the wavy, it's off the freeway. It's got like the wavy,
That's Roe, isn't it?
Not Great Eastern Highway.
I think it is Grayson.
It's got the yellow
but like
guys.
it was a very specific, like, I drove past and I was like, oh, that's a cool little landmark there, and then it was the first shot of
It
the
might have been
There it
Morrissey.
is. Yeah. No, it's talking about Road
sorry,
Highway.
the noodle. It's
Yeah.
the
noodles,
opening drone shot is actually
Yeah, the yellow question marks.
noodle
Where
light.
the oh, sorry. Damn it.
Noodle
That's
lights
okay.
across Road Highway.
The yellow
I can pull out
question
the old
marks.
sleeper.
Where the hell am I?
Yeah. No, but
Cool.
I remember thinking
Awesome.
that when I was like, oh, here we like I already know what I'm in for
Yeah.
at this point.
Yep.
But yeah, so there's a reason we had you two on specifically, and I know you two have a bit of a friendship, a bit of a history, a bit of a rapport, I can tell. So maybe tell me a bit about maybe that before we get into some of the music of the film.
Okay, so Des and I go way back to high school, where we started off
96.
enemies.
Enemies? Oh, come on, man. That's a bit harsh.
No, we're both
You're
very
all right.
well, come on, we're both ambitious. We're both the drama guys.
No, I was a bit of a dick, but you're all right.
trying to outdo each other. And we did a lot of theatre together. And we're in bands together, sort of wanting to conquer the world as rock stars.
Never crossed my mind.
Really?
No,
dear.
not once.
Then we
Different guy.
We lived together, which was awful. No, it was great. No, it was great.
My least favourite year of my life.
So during that year, it was great. It was a really sort of creative time for us. We both sort of wanted to be movie composers at that point, and we were listening to a lot of Zimmer and Williams and Jerry Goldsmith, and it was just we were just jamming all the time, and it was a good time. And so working with Des on this film was it was both fun and easy because we just we get each other musically. So.
Well, that sort of leads me to my next question of like, how did you two sort of approach each other for this film in particular? What was that conversation like?
Well, so there's two composers for the film. Obviously, Des is our local composer, and our other composer's James Leadbitter from Norway. I always wanted to sort of have this duality in the soundscape where I wanted to sort of have a real raw, earthy kind of Australian but sinister kind of a feel to it, which is what I think Des brings a lot of, and that also have this dreamy component, the sort of almost surreal element, which is what James Leadbitter brings and what he does so well. He writes this amazing ambient stuff. So, so I wanted to have that sort of duality to it. So, I just sort of, God, how did it all start? I think
Phone call.
That's right. So I called Des up. This is before.
Popular form of modern communication.
It's before we even wrote the script. I actually called Des up for a bit of a D&M, as we do. I'm like, I'm going to make this movie. He's like, oh yeah, what was it about? I was like, and I just proceeded to tell him basically the whole plot of the film, and he just sort of sat there very quietly and went on for about half an hour, and then
40 minutes.
Was it?
Yeah. Call duration, checked it.
And
Very
then
specific.
what was so sort of, I guess, genius of Des is that just based on that conversation, he went away, as he does, and jumped on the keyboard and wrote two pieces of music which actually are used in the film. So it's interesting. He didn't, obviously didn't see anything, no images, nothing. It was just based on my, anecdotes and telling him the plot. And we're going to hear those tracks a bit later, aren't we?
Absolutely. So that's kind of amazing because two tracks that made it pretty much all the way to the end just off a pitch.
Yeah.
Off a phone call.
Yeah.
Specifically, so Steve was giving me the rundown of the characters, and of course I was like, who's that character again? What's his? Oh, Shane. Yeah, Shane. And I struggled to remember the names. But obviously Bobby straight away took my attention. This Bobby guy, this recluse, this hermit who sort of just wants to be out of it all, but all of a sudden just gets constantly dragged into this situation. He just doesn't want to have anything to do with anything. But it's sort of his journey is the fact that, well, this situation has forced him to be dragged in out of his comfort zone, out of his recluselessness. And I was concentrating on that, and all of a sudden he's telling me stories about Bobby, who's these guys. I don't want to be spoilers, but there's obviously moments of the film. There's a lot of tension, and some unfortunate things have happened, and Bobby finds himself perhaps trailing or chasing these young boys through Swanview Forest, the bushland through there. And I sort of had images of the tension, what that would arise, where neither party really knows how or why they got caught up in this situation. Just the way, obviously, through Steve's description, is like, well, this is really unfortunate. Like, why does this have to happen? So it was that sort of tension that I immediately identified as like, well, this isn't part of anyone's plan. This is just stuff happening, series of events, and this. So I sort of started layering these angles of different sounds coming in different time signatures and different keys that sort of created this sort of wave tension. And I think I ended up calling the piece Vandalism because there was a bit of vandalism in the film.
Yep.
And that was it. And so we used that. You ended up using it a couple of times, which was nice to see that original sort of instinct, that original idea get used in the final product.
Yep.
All right. Well, in that case, let's give it a little bit of a listen, shall we?
Steve's just jumped off the phone. He's just told me the plot of the film over about 40 minutes, and I was like, oh yeah. So visualizing these scenes and these characters, and the setting obviously, which was very important. So yeah, trying to capture the emotion and the setting in a piece of music, which is basically obviously the starting point. And I knew that the way that I write, the style that I write, it wasn't going to be cinematic, Hollywood-esque. It's just not how I write. I knew it was going to be rustic. So I was going to use simple sounds and basically an overlapping of different sounds that probably wouldn't otherwise ordinarily belong together, but make them belong together because, you got these three boys that have no reason to be intercepting this life of this hermit man and vice versa. So all of a sudden you've got these different sounds that are supposed to juxtapose each other, just crossing over inadvertently, unnecessarily, I guess. So why is that happening? So that would create tension. And the other one was obviously the setting. And I was thinking about Swanview and what I knew of Swanview, and I don't obviously know it as intricately as what you do, but I always remember from when I was doing the milk run up there. I used to deliver milk in Swanview.
Did you?
Yeah. Jeez, 2007, 2008. And I'd come down that hill every morning at about 8 o'clock every morning. And I remember that, as you'd go off to different supermarkets and you'd be delivering milk, but you could hear the sound of the freeway and obviously the sound of the crickets and the bushland. And that's all I was sort of visualising. Okay, well, taking those sort of sounds and then trying to put them into the setting, but as well as tension and mood and where are we going. So it was a combination of what I knew about the area along with what I knew about these characters, which I'd only just met, through conversation. So that was where that instinctive idea came from. And, very exciting to hear it in the finished product. It was sort of interesting. I didn't know straight away if Steve sort of got it and got where I was coming from, I guess, when I was writing, which is sort of what you want as well, because you want to test your director too. You don't necessarily just want to give it to him, quick and easy, bite-size, here's a piece of intense music. You want him to sort of look for it as well. So then hopefully through that exploration, he'll find ideas that are a little bit edgy or different, so it doesn't feel like a mainstream film, which this obviously isn't. So I guess I was sort of putting the sounds in front of you as a little bit of a treasure hunt for yourself as well as there's something in there I can use, as opposed to, well, here's an obvious choice for this scene. There you go. So that was sort of because I knew you'd respond to it, because obviously we knew each other pretty well, and I thought I know which stuff he'll pick up on, and what he will like and what he won't necessarily like, and what he'll have to think about and decide whether he wants to use it or not. And there was hours of that stuff.
Great track.
Sorry?
Great track.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just wondering how much of this conversation would happen in pre-production versus while you were shooting versus strictly in post?
Oh, it sort of came in waves. I mean, I would call Des up, get him inspired again, talk about a scene, a character, some of the themes. Sometimes he would just get inspired, jump on his keyboard and be thinking about a particular thing, and then just throw me the track, because I'd be obviously editing the film as well. And I would sort of just arrange it, maybe use some of it, and just integrate it with some other tracks and some other things from James Leabitter. And so that was cool. So it was a big process of just trying different things. And for me, I was trying to keep myself open as well. It's like you don't really know until you sort of get the music in there and you see it, and you can see it and hear it with the characters and in the edit itself. So, it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of experimentation. So.
I'd quite confidently not look at footage that Steve had sent through of certain scenes.
Interesting.
Because I'd look at it quickly and just a quick glance and go, right, cool, and just take the emotion away, as into my own headspace, and rather than having the footage there and it goes up a bit. It was more about, I wonder what those guys are feeling right now. Geez, I'm going to take that wonder and then try and fabricate that through sound. So I'd sort of quiet off and walk away from the footage, hoping that the original instinctive emotion that I was feeling by watching it was there, as opposed to literally trying to score the scene. And then from there, I wasn't really fussed, I guess, if you picked up on it or not. As in, like, if you found it was suitable, then great. If you didn't, then perfect. But whereas that was what, if I'd trying to sort of orchestrate this scene perfectly, you get a bit too attached. It's kind of like, well, this is what I was going for, and Steve, there's disappointment. No, here's what I was feeling. If you pick that up, then let's put it down.
I guess you could say it was a little bit of an unconventional approach to it.
Yeah, but I always find that, like, my favorite film soundtracks, they do come way earlier in the process. And it's funny, I was going through some YouTube videos for The Crossing. I noticed a comment saying it reminded them of Interstellar, one of the tracks.
Oh yeah, I know that track.
Yeah, and I think that was also a film where the soundtrack was like one of the first things produced for that film. So
that was Leadbitter's.
That's Leadbitter's.
Yeah, I intentionally avoided that because I'm mad in love with that soundtrack, and I knew that. I got to watch my influences and make sure it didn't sound too Zimmerish.
I don't think it was the blam that they were referring to.
That would have been great in one of those scenes, though.
Just throw it in there for no reason.
Just chuck it in there. There's a bit of sci-fi in there too. I incorporate a bit of sci-fi. There's a bit of tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, because it's so non-sci-fi, this film, obviously. Spoiler alert. There's no aliens in it that we know of. But
got to keep looking.
I was ironic with a couple of the scenes as well. Sort of like, which was
intentionally juxtaposed.
Intentionally, a bit of tongue-in-cheek, which is kind of my humour. So I wonder if Steve will pick up on this, and he actually ended up using it, which was pretty hilarious.
It means it worked.
It worked.
Cool. Well, the second track I got here is called "The Confrontation," and this is also one of the other two that came up from the very early.
Yeah, I think this was the second one. Yeah, Des provided. Can we hear it?
Yes, let's take a listen.
that guitar melody, that became my axis. eventually. I was like, yes, that's definitely the film. You know, like John Williams, right? Superman. And we all go, Superman. Yeah. As soon as I heard that, it was that dum 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 dum. It was like the crossing.
Well,
it was
to me that
kind of
that tune
like,
is like, I don't know, it just reminds. It's got that Western flavour to it. It's kind of like man protecting his home kind of thing, and it just kept. It, you know, obviously it becomes a signature theme throughout the film.
Yeah. Well, so I kept on.
And it keeps building. It keeps building each time. Every time you hear it, there's another layer. And then until finally it gets to this part in the film where, you know, it's basically Bobby chasing them through John Forest.
Again, the whole movie's just a chase.
Yeah, it's just a
the
chase.
whole movie's Catch Me If You Can, starring Kelton Bell. No, it's not. So, it goes into it, but that's basically my band as well, which was fun.
Okay.
To getting them involved. Because
Brown Study Band.
Yeah, Brown Study Band. So I said, guys, I've got this tune, I've got this idea, and I had obviously several layers and some mock drums and bass on there, but I literally took it to our rehearsal space and set up some mics and said, jam along with this. And Steve ended up using it, which was nice as well. So and he ended up using like a lot of the Brown Study music.
It's riddled with Brown Study.
Yeah, it was handy.
Yeah,
I didn't expect you to sort of go there, but yeah, I can see now why he did. Plus it's homegrown and everything as well, which sort of suited.
For sure.
You know, suited your scenes, which was nice.
There's sort of an unspoken thing about that scene as well, where you're sort of following each individual character on their own journey. I mean, that's the whole thing of like, you know, the intercrossing storylines, but there's almost, I mean, when I watch it, I'm rooting for Colton Pell's character in this scene, you know, because he's just been messed with so many times.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I can totally see there being a bit of a confrontation within oneself. I want to get a little metaphorical there.
No,
because they don't know who to root for, perhaps.
Yeah, because none of them are necessarily bad guys. They're bad, you know, they're in bad circumstances.
Well, we see their perspectives.
Yeah. That's right. Perspective, very important. Yeah, this film is very much about perspective. And at this point in the film, it's like, you know, all bets are off. It's like, you know, there's a moment where you think the kids are going to get away for what they did.
Right.
And then you see that car coming around the corner and you hear the music build and you're like, right, that's it. You get them, you know, and you're just barracking him, you know,
totally. Yeah,
right to the end.
Yeah, it's a good analysis. What I noticed as well with designing, see a lot of these sounds was that, and thinking about those scenes, exactly what you're talking about, where these characters are kind of conflicted. And I was thinking, wow, it's interesting as I started to learn about the characters. Like, no one is a really well-rounded character in that they're a complete person. Maybe with the exception of Abby. Maybe I think there's a little bit of conflict of trust going on there. Maybe a backstory that we don't know about. She seems well-rounded and complete, but obviously with Chris, Shane, Angus, Bobby, Phoenix, Sav to a lesser extent, there's this conflict. They're trying to get around this issue that's in their head, whether it's about being true to themselves, being true to their own futures or their prospects, being true to their friends, you know, or what they want to do or what they see as being important in their own lives. You know, there's sort of been, and they've got other characters coming in spelling out what they should be doing. You know, you should be doing this. Why don't you try? It's like they're constantly in this thing of, why can't I just be content? And it's not what the film's about. The film is about that struggle. It's about that confrontation. So that was easy to find that tension.
The confrontation.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
Cool. Now I have another fun one that you sent me through an email where there was a bit of an evolution with this track.
Yep.
So do you know which track I'm referring to?
Paradise.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but to sort of understand Paradise, the instrumental version, we sort of have to just touch base on, you know, the song version, which is the song that the main character Bobby sings in the film, where he sort of, you know, he comes out for the first time, and he sort of the song is about where he views himself in relation to himself and the world, and also how he views the world, and it's quite an emotive sort of a song, and you know, it's sort of wrapped inside a documentary in which the two students are filming, you know, and it's a big turning point in the film. It's like, you know, there's something so much deeper to this character, you know, and so it's quite poignant. So the other track, Paradise, the instrumental version, Des took the song that I wrote, the Paradise track, and
just want to specify that you wrote the original, which is very important.
Okay. Yep. Jumped on the piano.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's Steve-esque of what I know of you, but yeah, it's a great song. It's a great song.
Go into that. Well, originally we're actually going to use a traditional sort of hymn, which it was okay, but about 3 days before we had to shoot that scene, I started just freaking out, thinking, I don't know if the audience is going to resonate with this sort of song. I need something with a broader kind of appeal, and the lyrics weren't working for me. So I sort of just had to just jump in and I guess try and save the day, if you like. I jumped onto my here I come to save the day. I jumped on my piano, and it was just one of those lucky things where the lyrics just came out straight away. It's like a Bono thing. It just came out. And it just came out quite quickly. Yeah. Then I quickly fleshed the song out with a local musician called Rupert John. Is this amazing guitarist.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we fleshed the song out.
No, I didn't know.
Kelton, Kelton loved it. We didn't have long to rehearse it, and it was just one of those days as well where, when we were filming, everybody was just crying on set. It was just like, whoa,
how good's Kelton?
Amazing
performance, man. The performance is amazing.
It's great.
My soul. When he goes up,
it's great.
Man.
So anyway, the instrumental version, which we're about to hear, is, without giving too much away of the film, it's sort of, in a way, it's sort of the tragedy of Bobby. It's beauty burning. It's it's what it could have been. If there was communication, if several things had have happened, but this is the result. And it's this.
It was an adaptation. I mean, the melody was there, the chords. Yeah, there was freedom within that to do something a little bit different, a little bit poignant, I guess, as opposed to a song performed for a film. Which was fun. It was nice having a platform to jump off, for a tune, because everything else was obviously had to be fabricated from just ideas. Whereas, okay, great, I've got something to start with here, and then.
Bit of a source.
But if you hear when we hear it, it sounds so different from the original song. But it is the song. It's a how would you describe it?
Yeah, it's an adaptation.
It's an adaptation.
It's like a version, man.
It's like a version. So
cool. All right.
Very interesting.
Let's hear a bit of both versions, a bit of the evolution that.
Okay. Oh, we're gonna hear the song first, are we?
Oh, nice.
My soul, it cries because we could have paradise. My soul, it cries because we could have paradise. Paradise, paradise, paradise. Paradise, we should have paradise.
Yeah, because I don't. Because you mentioned the tragedy of Bobby, which is an interpretation. I saw it more as a beauty, the beauty of Bobby, which you encapsulate obviously in his performance of it. But there's a soul behind it. There's literally a soul in it. It's a lyric, but there is a soul behind it, which I wanted to encapsulate. And soul is movement, and it's free flowing, and it's you know, it's a waveform between what he was experiencing, which was performing for people again for the first time. You know, so obviously these prime characters, and it was a projection of his spirit to these, because there is within the crossing, in order, you know, like every crossing will present, is that we're in one space, we need to get to another, which is what all these characters are going through, and Bobby goes through it in his own way. And as well, you say you've got to make your own crossing, of course, but you've also got to be open to other people coming in and influencing you to enable that, which is obviously what Abby and Chris were experiencing with their time spent with Bobby. So that's what I was concentrating on, was this energy, this really positive energy that he was.
This is another track that sort of hints coming, you know, in and out throughout the film until we get to the end, and then we hear the whole track. And again, it's foreshadowing. There's a lot of foreshadowing in this film, and I think it certainly leaves you with the soul of, you know, reminiscing of the soul of Bobby, both the tragedy and the beauty. I think dark track.
So yeah, it had to have movement. It had to sort of feel like it was always moving, which the whole movie does. You've seen it, Jake, so you'd probably realise that the entire. Is this just a spoiler? I'm not sure.
Careful.
I'll be
Careful.
careful. Edit it out if it is. But the whole movie is a complete crescendo,
Right.
in terms of energy, where it starts and where it finishes, which is very difficult to do, might I add. I don't remember too many films that have done it before, where it's really felt like it's starting from a point zero and ending up with 100. You know, quite often we see these movies, obviously, you know, move up and down, and they flow, and we get lulls in the middle, and you know, peaks and troughs and whatnot. This film, for me personally, was just a complete crescendo. This piece of music had to be that as well, because it really is starting with point zero and taking us to a resolution, you know, which is necessary in order for all characters to enable their journey.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, because sonically you're trying to match the sort of the narrative thrust, which is what I like to call it, where it's
narrative thrust.
Narrative thrust.
Thrust?
Thrust or thrust?
CH.
For us.
Thrust.
See, I had when I was in high school, I dated someone who pointed out that I can't say free and free, like the number free and free. So it just bothers me now.
What's
I just
that?
can't say words.
F-R-U-S-T. Thrust.
Thrust.
I love it.
Oh, okay.
I love it.
I
It's
thought
a
I was
great
saying
word.
something incompetently.
No, you weren't. You're actually being creative, and I want to
okay.
find out the definition of that right now, because I'm sure there is.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's like
it has to be.
It's like you're on a rocket,
Yeah, exactly.
rocketing through.
Can I just say something about what happened last night? And it's
Okay.
sort of tooting our own horn.
There's no internet.
But
All right.
you know, it was the first time that I'd sort of ever been at a cinema with a large group of people who didn't move the whole time.
Wow.
Okay.
And they sort of, most of them stayed through all of the credits, through all of this song. They clapped, of course, and you know there was one point where I needed to go to the toilet, and I felt bad. Like getting up, like everyone was just completely still, just watching the whole time, and it felt a little surreal, you know.
Well, it's not the fact that you've seen the film probably 500 times at this
Well,
point, but it's
lot
you didn't
more
want
than
to
that.
disrupt
5,000.
the feeling in the room.
Yeah, I know. It was just there was an energy there, and
Yeah.
it was the hairs on my arm were standing up. It was great.
The second viewing that I saw at Backlight, I can say that was exactly the same. You know, any time that someone would just shuffle in their chair a little bit, like, ooh, move. But
What
the
are you
rest
doing?
of it was just dead
What are you
still.
doing?
Right, exactly.
A piece of broken off or detached is a thrust. Fragments of rock. An incomplete-
The runner was very.
An incomplete piece or portion is a thrust.
Yeah, I was thinking more like when a rocket thrusts forward. That's sort of what I was.
No, I prefer this.
Okay.
Piece of broken off. So you were talking about a narrative thrust, as in a piece of the
That it's
narrative
all
So
that has fallen
somewhere.
off. in the
Continue
pro-
down that point. Sorry, we cut you off there. We
No,
went on a
no,
massive
no.
tangent.
That's
It was
all right.
But you were talking about the narrative thrust.
I was inspired. Excuse me.
So
That things they all kind of shoot forward.
Brilliant.
In a certain way.
Brilliant.
And a lot of films don't necessarily have that. Well, you're right. You're right. It's more of a sort of it ebbs and flows and sort of comes in and out. But
well, it's like a clear beat with each, with each scene in the film. And yeah, you're right. It is one big crescendo, if you like.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was intentional or not. But the fact that it has become that, I'm okay with. I think that's really clever. Just because it's very difficult to get a film to do that. And, some of the feedback that I got was that even in that, it doesn't, it doesn't lull, it doesn't bore. It's sort of like you're building with these characters, you're building as you get to know them, you sort of get to the end and you're like, oh, yeah, that just happened. You know, so again, spoiler alert. But hey, you know, you might not enjoy the film. Sorry, we think it's all right.
Well, I can relate to like the overwhelming, like, wow, that was like an experience. That was like a really, some stories you walk out and you're like, I'm a bit, wasn't satisfied with that, or this didn't quite go the way. But I definitely, for this one, I felt like everything tied up really well together, and it felt like I definitely got a feature's worth of story in that. Sometimes not enough story, sometimes way too much story.
Very hard to do with, you know, a length of an hour and 50 minutes too.
Yeah,
But it's, you know, we didn't want it to exceed 2 hours. We wanted it to be quite short, so
Yeah.
it was tough. A lot of editing and refining and putting audiences and doing tests and
Yeah, sure. Well, it looks like just the audiences and the packed out cinemas looks like it's paid off.
Yeah, no, well, it's been overwhelming. The response to the film so far, and of course I'm desensitized to it a little bit now after seeing it 10,000 million times. But you know, it's great. People are really resonating with it, and you know, it's an emotional film, you know, and a lot of people can relate to even just some aspect of it. You know? It's been we're humbled.
Sure.
It's
Steve's going to do a comedy next. He's going to do a comedy. Yeah, there's an announcement. Yeah, because he's actually like, is Phoenix. You know, he's playing the role of Phoenix, and Phoenix is a very intense, conflicted character in the film.
Let's not talk about Phoenix.
Hey, why not? Why not? What's wrong with Phoenix?
Intense.
He's a good bloke. He's a good bloke. He's all right. No, he's not. He's horrible. He's a horrible human being. All right.
Well, you joke, but that was the George Lucas approach. His second film was a dare. You got to do a chill comedy now. That's how it worked out.
Yeah, there's a sense of humour that's unfortunately, if it was used, I mean, it's subtle in the film, but if it was overused, it would be misplaced. It just wouldn't be right. Yeah. You know, in order to evoke the emotion. But whereas, now that you've been through that process, it'll be so much fun to just go and just
absolutely.
You know,
I mean, Des and I grew up doing mostly comedy. You know, so it's really our roots. You know, we're not funny anymore, but
believe it or not,
you know,
right down the
we're not funny anymore. But there was a time. There was a time.
We promise
when we were good.
Yeah, somewhat jaded now. Yeah, very much.
And then
so.
everything just turned dark. You know,
just dark.
Everything just went dramatic.
That's right. And tragedy, and awfulness.
Yeah,
death primarily.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, there's
getting very existential now. Where do we get to this?
I have no idea. I'm scared.
Let's.
Well, before we wrap up, I think there's one more.
There's another track.
Something that you mentioned you wanted to end off with.
So one of the really exciting things for me with the soundtrack of the film is that I was able to use some music from one of my favourite bands of all time. They're a duet in Nashville called Hammock, and the music that they create is incredibly visual. And they've got this album called Departure Songs, and I've probably heard it more than any album in my life. I still listen to it probably 3 or 4 times a week as I'm going to sleep. It sort of helps with creativity. It's therapeutic, and it's just, I don't know, just incredibly visual. And I was just able to use 2 tracks of theirs in the film, which was, it's pretty exciting.
One of the first things Steve said when he was pitching this movie was, there's this band Hammock, and I obviously hadn't heard of them. Definitely some of the cinematic, some of the drone shots, it aids it perfectly, which is credit to him that he's seen that vision as early as what he did in the process. And again, to see it come to fruition in the final product, very important to hang on to that, so you don't lose sight of what your initial idea was, what your instinctive idea was. So credit to Steve for acknowledging that.
Well, thank you, Desmond.
You're welcome, Stephen.
Yeah, so a bit of a shout out there.
Sorry?
Sounds like a bit of a shout out there.
Bit of a shout out to Hammock. Can they hear me?
I would say more of a lie down.
Oh, it is a lie down track, but it's bloody powerful. Gets to me.
For sure. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, Jake.
For coming
It's
on
been
to
a
the
pleasure,
show.
man. Thanks for
Yeah.
the chat.
So the Crossing is still playing locally,
Yep.
and it's gone around. I think it's playing in Melbourne and places. It was still playing around here in Perth area.
Yeah, so we got a screening tonight at Kookaburra Outdoor Cinemas. There's a screening at Carlton Nova in Melbourne on Jan 31. There's Telethon Community Outdoor Cinemas in Bassendean Jan 26. And Murdoch Jan 21.
Right here.
And Joondalup as well, Jan 31. And we also play the film at Orana Bustleton Febs 3 and then Orana in Albany Feb 7. And, what else is there? At Camelot on Feb 23. And then also the Matt Dan cinema in South Headland the 19th of Feb. So a few screenings coming up, which is good.
Yeah, playing all the way through to February.
Yep.
And hopefully beyond.
And maybe beyond.
Maybe beyond.
Yep.
The Busselton one's significant, isn't it, Stephen?
Well, that's where we grew up.
That's where we grew up.
Right.
We grew up in Busselton, so it's kind of like...
That'd be nice.
Feel like home.
That'd be nice
Yes,
going
it
home.
would be nice.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, I mean, you two have a great bond, great friendship, and I think it comes off well with how well the music and the visual sort of gel together.
Thank you.
Thanks for acknowledging that. It does make it easier.
Yes, it does make it easy.
It's like, no, you get it. It's cool.
Yep.
Sweet. Move on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. less meetings, you know.
yeah.
You can just
Yeah.
like
Don't
you
have
just
to-
go,
Yeah.
Des,
Yeah.
this is what I'm thinking. You know? What do you
Gotcha.
think? Yep,
Yeah.
got it.
Great.
Cool. I know what you're saying. Yep, done.
3 a.m. phone
I'm
call.
on it.
Yeah.
And it's perfect.
It
you
does
know?
make
Yeah.
it easier.
Oh,
Bloody
yeah.
oath.
So
Awesome.
it's been a great experience, you know, having Des come on board as the composer for his first feature film and my first feature film, and sort of with all the history that we have. Yeah, it's been it's great. You know, it's making a film with friends. That's what
For sure.
That's sort of what it felt like. You know,
It's one of the best ways to do it.
wouldn't have it any other way.
It's not what you do, it's who you share your carpet with, mate.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. Crossing all of those dates and hopefully more. If you haven't seen it yet, do yourself a favor. Very good. I can attest.
Thanks, Jake.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake.
Cheers,
No
dude.
worries.
Thank you.